Welcome back to the Commercial Property Podcast. And today I'm going to be talking to you about something that some of you may find a bit surprising, but I spend a lot of my time as a trainer and a mentor talking clients out of deals. Now, I probably am one of the few property mentors in the UK who probably spend most of their time doing that. And it's not because I don't want clients to get deals. In fact, the reason I taught them out of it is because I want them to do the very best deals. Now, not kind of, totally blow the lights out, fireworks deals, but great solid deals that will build their objectives for the future. And surely a mentor wants their clients to buy loads of properties. Well, of course I do, if that's what they want. So when we start, I start with board members, we start with the end in mind. And over the years, when I've been doing this exercise with investors, I have realized that sometimes it's not about quantity of deals. Some people have a very low cash flow target they actually need to get to. And sometimes they need to do a certain type of deal that's going to change the game for them, because we're all about objectives here at the Commercial Property Academy. So it's not just about going out doing deals for the sake of it. There has to be a strategy and a logic behind it. And, there's several categories of this topic. First of all, there's just not great deals out there. And that, I'll talk clients out of doing those. But also there's deals that don't align with their direction of travel. And, my job as a mentor is to challenge that. And so I would very strongly recommend that, we'll talk about the kind of types of deals in a minute, but I would very strongly recommend that before you even start your investing, you work out where you want to get to, because you can't start on a journey without a destination. And I think that's what so many people do when they start a new strategy. They intuitively know that it's probably right for them, and it probably is, but they don't know exactly what they want to get out of it. And, if that's all, that's financial freedom, that's cash flow, great. But let's put some numbers on that. Let's work out what your risk profile is. Let's work out maybe where your strengths or weaknesses are. Let's work out how much money you've got to invest. Let's work out exactly what freedom means to you. And, by having that clarity, we can actually or they can find investments, and I can help them with finding those investments that can really tick all the boxes. And also, I think as entrepreneurs, investors, I think very often some people don't know when to stop as well, because sometimes it's not about growing a big portfolio. It's about having the right properties in that portfolio. So, for example, if you want freedom from sitting at a desk all day, then you want hands-off income. And of course, commercial is great for that, because you can get long leases, you can get great kind of blue chip tenants, where the lease is full repairing and insuring, so the tenant is paying the rent on a quarterly or a monthly basis, and they're doing all the repairs to the property. Of course, you still need to be checking in on that property and that tenant, and maybe your managing agent, but you're not in the business on a day-to-day basis. And so, again, if they're finding properties that are going to be much more hands-on in that scenario, then, my job as a mentor is to question why. So I think my first tip to you today really is work out where you want to get to, because then you can work out whether deals are right for you. And, it's really, really important to do this, because you can make your fortune, you can make your life, you can fulfill your dreams through a great deal. But equally, you could do absolutely the flip side by doing a bad deal. And what we don't want to do is avoid that. And obviously that's my job by giving clients knowledge and support and mentorship, that they avoid those kind of things. And of course, many people think that building a great big portfolio, buying deals is the way to success. And, it's not always the case. I mean, for example, if you've built a portfolio up, have you considered deleveraging that portfolio so that you can actually get higher cash flow? Without even buying more properties, you can actually get more cash flow out of that portfolio. Are there any unnecessary costs in that portfolio that you could move to the side or get rid of? And that means that you can actually increase the cash flow. So there's lots of different ways of doing this stuff. But I think frustration does seep in because, we all want to do deals. We all want to get to kind of get to our targets quickly. And it's almost kind of learning from every deal that is rejected. And what I find is that it can be a little bit demoralizing. Sometimes we get a bit of a dip with clients when, they've looked at loads of properties. It's not through lack of action, but nothing has stuck. Either they've not had offers accepted, or they've actually actively rejected deals because they're not right for them. And, they kind of sometimes get in the philosophy of, I have to buy something. And the pressure becomes, I've invested too much time to walk away from this. But what professional investors think, and what, where my board members get to, which is my small group mentoring, is, they get very discerning about the type of deals. And you learn from every deal that doesn't happen. You become a better investor from that. And if I wanted to improve my statistics as a mentor, I just get every client to do the next deal that comes along. They'd buy more properties, etc. I'd have loads of amazing case studies. But I do have great case studies because the deals that do get done are the right deals for that particular client, and my mission in my business is to change lives through commercial investing. And by that, I mean lives for the better. I'm not in the business of people buying deals that aren't right for them, or that just don't make sense as a deal because they're inexperienced, just for the sake of getting deals done. So let's kind of draw a line under that. We need to make sure that everything that we're doing is the right deal for them. And, it's even more important in commercial than in residential, because in residential, as long as you've got a half decent property, there will always be somebody to live in it. It's well publicized. We've got a housing shortage in the UK, and therefore, there's lots and lots of people to live in homes. Now, we might not get the rent we want, or the Renters Reform Act has kind of changed the terms of business with renters, but we will always let that out. But commercial is different. Commercial, you need to understand the fundamentals of a property. It needs to be in the right location. You need to understand supply and demand. You need to understand what rents you could get. You need to understand what lease terms you can get. You need to understand what type of tenants you can get. Are they going to be blue chips? Are they going to be mom and pop type businesses? But you really need to understand this stuff. And that's why I talk a lot about niching with my clients. And that's why I've formed lots of my niching models that I work with clients on, because there's so many different types of commercial property that what we want to do is we don't want to be scattergun investors, because we're going to make mistakes. We're going to buy the wrong deals. We want to niche so we'll become the experts in a location or a sector, and then we can spot deals really quickly. We can spot them from a mile off. I can look at my own deals, I can look at clients' deals, and I can spot the good ones within a couple of minutes of looking at them. And that's kind of the skill, that's the muscle that you need to develop with this stuff. And I suppose the skill is that you don't, to begin with, you will spend quite a lot of time doing viewings and looking at abortive deals, but you will learn and hopefully quite quickly. And that's why immersive programs like my board are good, because obviously you learn not only from your deals, but you learn from everybody else's as well. And you work out very quickly what is right. And therefore, you might spend quite a long time up front looking at things. You'll be doing viewings, you'll be meeting agents, but all that stuff is good practice, because you get to build relationships, you get to understand different types of property, you understand locations. But then when you get really good at this stuff, you can reject properties quickly, you can work out numbers on properties quickly, you can do a basic stack sitting at your desk, and you will work out whether something is right for you or not. And that's where I aim to get my clients to, is very quickly they are getting to that point. And I'll give you a case in point. So when I started the board a couple of boards ago, I had one client who had brought this incredibly large deal. I think it was about a £5 million lot size. It was a multi-let, and it was very complex. It was being sold by a fund. They were open to creative ways of purchasing it, exchange delay completion. They were quite a motivated vendor. So on the face of it, that it was an interesting opportunity. And of course, my client saw this as a opportunity to basically achieve his property objectives in one. This was his first commercial deal, but he spent a long time on this, really, really analyzing it, speaking to agents, doing viewings. He went around all the tenants. I think it was about 20 tenants in this property, and spent a very, very long time looking at it. Now, sometimes with big deals like that, we have to spend a little time on it together so we can understand it. So he was sent away to do that kind of due diligence. And so we were basically 3 months into the board, and every month we had discussed it. And he was finding it challenging to raise finance for it. And there was obviously some structural problems with the particular property. Now, for the right person, that deal might have made sense, actually. For somebody who is based in the local area, got lots of experience of asset management, that type of thing, lots of time. My client hasn't got time because he's got a day job. And, there are lots of reasons why that deal might have worked for somebody else. But for him, he was time poor. He was putting all his eggs in one basket. He was inexperienced. He was taking on a load of risk with this property as one big deal, and basically had to get some tough love out in month 3 of the board, and saying, look, at some point in time, perhaps this kind of deal might be right for you, but my very strong recommendation is that you move on. Now, it wasn't necessarily a bad deal. It just wasn't right for him at that particular time. And sure enough, he did. He took my advice. And what I love about this story is that now this client is working with me on the Platinum Club. He is like a deal machine. It's like rejecting that deal unlocked something in his brain. And he was like, right, I need to actually go down a different path. He's done commercial deals. He's done mixed use deals. And you know what? They are blowing the lights out. And more importantly, they are absolutely right for him. So he is one of my clients that actually is kind of his deal flow now is great. And basically at the beginning of the board, he'd never bought a property. And now he's on to multiple unit, and he's got a great pipeline coming through. And you know what? He's achieving his hopes and dreams, but they are great deals that he's doing. He's getting most of his money out of his deals as well. So he's recycling his capital. And that's just because he had a complete change of direction. When we had the change of direction, we worked out what would work for him. And then he was absolutely off. So sometimes we need to find these deals that we don't do because we learn those lessons from it. But the important thing is not to be demoralized. It's not to give up. You will never know what's on the other side after you give up. The people who succeed are the people that learn the lessons, adjust, move their strategy into a different direction, and they do get the deals and they do get the pipelines as well. And every month on the board, members, we always have a deal clinic, and members bring deals to the board. Sometimes we all get really excited about a deal because we can all see that it's really got legs. Sometimes we all challenge the deal, and sometimes one of us, doesn't necessarily me, spot something that other people have missed because they're maybe they're from the local area, or they've invested in that kind of thing before. The power of collective experience, not just having a mentor, but collective experience. And what I love seeing as my board members go through the program is that they start asking the right questions of the person bringing the deal. They start querying it, because if you can do that on somebody else's deal, you can absolutely do it on your own. Although we do have more blind spots with our own deal. My job is to unblock those kind of those blockers. And sometimes the most important word in property is no. I'm going to move on and do something else. And, I definitely sleep better saying no to deals than saying yes sometimes. If a deal is absolutely right for a client and, makes sense, it doesn't have to be an all money out deal. It doesn't have to be a blow the lights out deal. It just has to make sense for them. It has to have some good long-term potential if that's what they're looking for. then, I absolutely support them to the hilt. I will help them write offer letters, negotiate with agents, move into due diligence and help them through that. And I will help them asset manage the property and, make it a success. That's what it's all about, but it's got to be the right deal for them. And that's why when we're doing numbers on commercial, a lot of people want all money out deals. That's absolutely right for some people, and I've got loads of clients doing all money out deals. But equally, if you've got a payback of a couple of years on a multi-million-pound property that is absolutely the right fit for your portfolio, then we need to pause and really think carefully about that, because that's probably the right deal for that particular client at that time as well. So and as a board, as a group, we celebrate these decisions. We celebrate rejecting decisions because it's a move forwards into the right direction, and we celebrate the deals, obviously. Because ultimately, and I suppose here's the nub of it, the investor with the biggest portfolio doesn't always win. The investor with the best portfolio wins. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean that it's structured properly. It's got the right kind of properties in it, that it's got longevity. And I think this is really important, just to pause on that, because we're dealing with commercial tenants, we're dealing with businesses. We need to make sure that our tenants are AI proof, that there's going to be continued demand in the area, that it's going to be it's going to be a good asset in 10 years as well as a good asset today. So, we don't just look at numbers today at a point in time. I have deal stackers which look at it over cash flow period of 5 years, 10 years, maybe even longer if they want to do that, because quality always beats quantity every single time. So if you remember something from today's episode, then let it be this. Don't judge yourself on how many deals you buy this year. Judge yourself on the number of things you look at and the quality of your decisions and how you learn from that. And, sometimes the most profitable deal you will ever do actually is the one you walk away from. So, we want to do deals. I actively encourage my clients to do deals. Obviously, all my clients are doing deals. New board members, not quite yet, but, in the Platinum Club, everybody's, looking at deals, doing deals. But sometimes there's a process that people need to go through. So if you're interested in looking at my board, the link is below. We open the board every 6 months, and my goal is to build better investors. My goal is to absolutely hold your hand through these deals and support you at every step of the way to make sure you make the right decisions for you, not just generic decisions, but you make the right decisions for you. So click the link below in the show notes if you're interested. As I say, we open the board every 6 months. So if you're interested, click the link, and I look forward to having a chat if you would like to do that. So thank you for listening today. Really important subject that I really felt compelled to do a podcast on. So thank you for listening to this today. And I look forward to seeing you next time on the Commercial Property Podcast.